Welcome back to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. This is Jeremy McDonald hosting today's conversation. If you're listening to this in real time, it is the first conversation of 2023. It is a new year, and I really think this particular question and conversation is a wonderful one to kick us off as we think about the ministry that we get to have with teenagers, and in particular, some of the tough spots that I think God actually places us in on purpose. So one thing you need to know about this conversation, one little shout out to what's happening this coming year, and then we'll get into it. But this is a conversation I got to have with Randy Carter a couple of years ago, actually. So this was a pre-released episode back on episode 42 of our podcast in September of 2019. And this was just such a compelling conversation with Randy. I didn't know exactly where this was all going to end up. I just knew and loved Randy Carter and the ministry that he's had in our country of Canada, as a communicator, as a youth worker, as a trainer, and then he just opened up about some of these stories. And so I wanted to make sure that you got a chance to hear this one in case you haven't listened from a few years ago. And I really think it just helps, again, reframe our hearts and our minds as we head into ministry this year. So looking forward to getting this one into your workflow here. You get a chance to listen in to the conversation I had with Randy. Now, if you are listening to this in real time, the other thing you should know is we are heading on a tour across our country for our conferences. And this is a great place for you to be able to train and equip yourself and the rest of your volunteer team. These 2-day conferences happen in 5 cities in our country of Canada, and we would love to see you there. I've got the link in the show notes. And if you are from Ontario for the first time, we have got a couple of wonderful events we'd love for you to come and check out. We'll be at the Youth Pastor Summit, which is, again, linked in the show notes. And then also a couple of people from our team will be hanging around at today's Teens Conference. And so that is another great event happening here in the winter of our country of Canada. If you're from outside of our borders, we would love to connect with you. I put my email in the show notes, and certainly there's lots of ways that we can get a chance to think about youth ministry together. So let me know. But for right now, let's jump into today's conversation that I got to have with Randy Carter on how do you love the unlovable teen in your group.
Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers. So we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
I am joined today by Randy Carter. Randy, this is so fun to have you with us. Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm in Calgary.
In Calgary, and that's where you've been doing ministry for a little while. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been doing youth ministry as an itinerant youth speaker and doing some youth pastor mentoring for the last 25 years. July 1 was 25 years of that. Before that, I was a youth pastor for 11 years. I don't know why anyone would choose to work with big people when they can work with students. Absolutely beyond me.
Well, and there was so much fun catching up with you just before we hit record because we know each other. We first met when you were speaking at the youth group I was attending as a student, as a teenager, in Moncton, New Brunswick, a few years ago. And I remember I was quoting back to you. You were so solid. I was quoting back to you talk. And we don't have to go into super details, but it was peaches, prunes, and alfalfa.
That's very true. 3 kinds of kisses.
Yeah. So very memorable. But not only that, I've loved how you've thought both strategically about ministry and that your heart for ministry and for students is just so strong. And so we've had some really pivotal chats actually over the years for me personally, which has been so helpful as I've kind of thought about my call and what it means to be in youth ministry. And so I'm so grateful for it. And then, Randy, why don't you fill people in before we jump into what we're talking about today? So when you say you're a speaker and you work with youth workers, what is your ministry called? What do you get to do on a week-to-week basis?
Sure. 25 years ago, there was a little ministry called Straight Talk Ministries that was founded to allow me to travel and speak anywhere that people would have me, including Moncton, if you can imagine such a thing.
All the way from Calgary, yeah.
All the way from Calgary. What a great adventure. And then, so I travel and speak to students. I also do some youth ministry mentoring. I have usually one group of youth pastors on the go. We meet one day a month to study the life of Jesus and apply that to our ministries and try and make ministries that are disciple-making ministries, disciples who can make disciples who can make disciples. And so that's the majority of what I do, is speaking to students and trying to help people be more effective in what they're doing with students.
Yeah, I love that so much. And we'll make sure that at the end of this episode, people know how to get in touch with you if they want to invite you in, have you be a part of what they're up to. But our audience, and I was mentioning this, we've got an incredible group of frontline youth workers that are listening. There's lots in Canada, so it's mostly Canada. But we're a little bit worldwide here at the Youth Ministry Team podcast. And so we're unapologetic about our Canadianness, though. So that's going to be all right. But I love, as we were talking earlier, you were sharing a bit of the journey that you guys are on these days. We think about doing youth ministry. Man, there's sometimes a real sense that there are hard days with your small group, with your students, as you look at some of the people that maybe God's placed around in your circle to figure out how to love them authentically. Christ has loved us. And you've got this story that is, man, I think it's going to be, it's going to be heartbreaking, but I think it's going to be important for all of us here today. And if you're comfortable, would you share what your family's going through these days?
Sure. This part of our story started back on Christmas Eve, 2016. Yes, 2016. My daughter was singing in the Christmas Eve service, and after the service, a young man came up to us to talk to Kevin, and it was pretty obvious as soon as he opened his mouth, he wasn't from here. He had this great Australian accent. His name is Scott. We talked with him a little bit and found out he was in Canada, had been here for about 10 years, came to learn how to wrestle, if you can imagine. The WWE kind of wrestling.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. And so I got talking to Scott, found out he was living alone in a basement suite. And I can't imagine anything more depressing than being alone on Christmas Day in a basement suite. So as we were driving home, I said to my wife, Donna, I don't want to encourage anything, but I don't feel good about the poor guy being alone on Christmas. Should we see if our daughter, whose name happens to be Kevin, would be interested in inviting him to join us? We do a pretty crazy kind of Christmas. We go out to my brother's place, and after we open presents, we shoot shotguns, and it's a real redneck Christmas. But we thought this will do something for this poor kid, and he agreed he'd like to come. So we spent the day with Scott, got to know him. Great guy, great young man, and so. Shortly after Christmas, my daughter was over and she announced that she and Scott were now dating. And we were a little concerned about that because we knew Scott wasn't a Jesus follower. And as we discussed that, she said, yeah, but Daddy's really open. And so Donna said, because she's the brains of our family, well, would you at least invite him to go to Alpha with you? She said, sure. But there's something about Scott's life that he told me the very first time we dated, and it's a lot. We now refer to it as Scott's small print. And he would like to come over and talk to you about it if we're dating. And so we said, sure. He came over one night and he explained to us how about a year and a half earlier, he was arrested and charged with a very serious crime. And he believed he was innocent. And he was working to defend himself in court, which was coming up. And he allowed us to ask any questions we wanted to ask. And he didn't paint one person as black and one person as white. He seemed to be pretty authentic and forthcoming. And so it was a lot, but we just kind of went, okay. And interestingly, they started going to Alpha, and the weight of trying to get enough money to mount a defense was really weighing on Scott, and he was having a super bad day, completely under it. And he was walking through Home Depot just beside himself. He was selling everything he owned. He was trying to borrow money from family to get enough for this $40,000 to mount his defense. And he was just beside himself. And a guy he didn't know, a Filipino man, came up to him and said, this is going to sound really weird, but I think God wants me to pray for you. Would that be okay? Scott went, okay. So this guy starts praying for Scott, and he's praying about stuff he had no business knowing about. It was like he was reading Scott's mail. Scott starts to cry. This guy finishes off and leaves. First thing Scott does is phone my daughter, Kevin, and explain what just happened. And she starts to cry on the phone. He says, are you crying? Why are you crying? And she said, I've been praying God would show you he's real. And I think he's doing that.
Wow.
And so the next night they went to Alpha and both texted us, it's on prayer tonight. What a cool thing. And we knew Scott was being reeled in by God's Holy Spirit somehow. And the next Monday they got together, and he ominously said to Kevin, there's something we need to talk about. And she thought, oh man, what now? Is there another shoe that's about to drop? Is there more? She said it took him a little over a minute to finally choke out the words, "I think I'm becoming a Christian." And she said, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, what I'm seeing in you and your parents, and what I'm learning at Alpha, I think this is what I want. And this prayer thing's pretty hard to deny." And so she said, "Well, all we need to do is pray. And we could do that here. We could do that at Alpha. I'm sure mom and dad would be happy to talk to you if you'd want to do that." So he said, "Let's talk to your parents." So they came over the following Wednesday and we had supper. We had a chat. And on February 22nd of 2017, I had the amazing privilege of leading Scott to Jesus in my kitchen.
Wow.
Awesome. We got to watch God changing him. He was working out of town, and every now and then I get a phone call. "Hey, I should be baptized, shouldn't I? Shouldn't I be baptized?" "Yes, Scott, you should be baptized." "That's excellent." Another day phone. "Somebody said I should be discipled. What is that? Should I be discipled?" I said, "Yes, Scott, when you get home, we need to talk about that." So we could see him growing. And then in July of 2017, he invited me to go to out for coffee. Now, when there's a young man dating your daughter and he wants to go for coffee at a fancy place like McDonald's, you know something's up. And so we went for coffee, and he asked if we could have permission to get engaged. And I said, "You're both adults. You don't need our permission. But boy, do I value that you want our blessing. And if you weren't a believer, this would be a different conversation. But I've seen God changing you, and we'd be thrilled to have you as our son-in-law." So they got engaged. Thought they'd wait till maybe after the court case that was still looming in the future, and then decided, no, we're committed. We want to do this. So they got married on February the 10th, 2018. And the court case started March 5th. And Scott didn't want anyone going in with him during the court case because he knew it was going to be phenomenally just really exposing and not nice. And I was talking to him one night when the girls were all out, and my son-in-law and Scott and I were doing wedding crafts. We were making ribbon roses with very manly ribbon roses, Jeremy, I'm telling you. And I said, "Scott, I'd like you to rethink that. I'd like to be there if I can." And so he did give me permission. So on March 5th, I went to court with him for the first day. And as I sat through the first day of listening to everything that was being said and the charges and the evidence, at the end of the day, I said to Scott, "You know what, Scott? I think technically you're guilty. And I think you're probably going to be found guilty." But then I grabbed him by the shoulders so I could look right in his face. "But I need you to hear this. Nothing I've seen or heard today changes the way I feel about you. I love you. And your position in our family is secure. You're our son." So we went home, and every day after court, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd say exactly the same thing to him. The case was given to the jury on Thursday, and when we got word that the jury had come to a decision, I again grabbed him by the shoulders and said, "Scott, nothing I've seen or will see or hear or will hear today will change the way I feel about you. I love you. You're my son. Your position in our family is secure." He was found guilty. He was allowed to be out on bail for 3 months before the sentence. But the Sunday after the court case, I was standing in my kitchen getting ready for church. And suddenly, Jeremy, I was completely overwhelmed with the reality that every day, the God of the universe says to me, "Randy, nothing I have seen or heard changes the way I feel about you. I love you. You've had a bad day, my friend, and your position in my family is totally secure." And I was wrecked. I was wrecked by this overwhelming, unconditional love of God. So it's been a hard year. It's been hard since 2018. Scott was in prison for a year. He was given parole. And because he's not a permanent resident, as soon as he was paroled, he was deported to Australia. So we're still in the journey, but I still regularly say to my Aussie son-in-law, "Scott, nothing I've seen or heard changes the way I feel about you. I love you, and your position in our family is completely secure. You are our son."
Wow. Randy, that, yeah, wow. What an unbelievable, just incredible gift that moment on that Sunday morning would have been, to be able to connect the dots.
Yeah.
to how God views and sees us. And I mean, I got to ask, like, as you are the father of a daughter and journeying with this guy, why not just give up on him? There would have been so many
Oh,
opportunities, I'm sure.
well, yeah. And I guess as a believer, I just can't go there. For years, I've said, if we're going to reach our students, we have to love them like crazy. I'm a big fan of Romans chapter 12, where Paul wrote, don't just pretend to love one another, really love each other. And I think what everyone's looking for, and Jeremy, this has wrecked me in the most positive way. I'm completely blown away by God's unconditional love. And I guess I feel so strongly that as believers, until we have connected with God's unconditional love, we're not ready to unconditionally love the students that God's placed in front of us. But I think that's the piece that makes the difference. They're going to forget all of our talks. They're going to forget, many of our events, but they're not going to forget us. And we dare not give up. It's too soon to give up on our kids. Mm-hmm. And some kids are easy to love. They're easy, they're forthcoming. But then there's some others that are more difficult. And there's the only ongoing contact I kind of get regularly with kids, because I'm a speaker. I blow in, blow up, and blow out. So I get short-term connection with students, which I love. But the really only ongoing long-term connection I get is when I get to do a temporary role in a church as their youth pastor. I've done that a few times, but is a week of summer camp I direct.
Yeah.
And there was a kid who came a number of years ago after grade 6. Grade 6 was the first year he could come to my week of camp. Didn't really want to come. You could tell, wasn't interested in any of the Jesus stuff, was a difficult kid. And I usually have an easy time connecting with students, but man, he was giving me the straight arm every time I talk to him.
Does that fire you up when you get the straight arm, or is it just difficult? Is it difficult for you?
For me, it's easy to love students. And I think I learned a long time ago that students that are difficult didn't choose to be difficult. There's something going on in their heart. And so I wanted to figure out, how do I love this one? The ones that are easy to love, well, that's easy. But how do I love this one that's difficult? And at the end of the week, I said to him, so have you had a good week? He said, it was okay. Are you coming back next year? Not to your week. Oh, buddy, drive a knife through my heart. What are you doing? At any rate, the next year, his parents made him come back my week. So that was good. Still had the same attitude, still difficult. And, we made a few strides that week, and I'd still try and connect with him at church when I was there on weekends and stuff, but he'd still give me the strong arm. Came back in 8th grade, and he loved riflery, shooting pellet guns. So I was helping put pellet guns away this one day. I think it was this Tuesday of camp. And he commanded, he didn't ask, he commanded, mark that gun for me. I finally got it sighted in perfectly. Mark it somehow so I can find it tomorrow. And I said, oh, you like shooting? Yeah, I love shooting. Have you ever shot a big gun? Like, what do you mean? Like a hunting rifle or something? No. I said, well, I've got a hunting rifle and I've got a shotgun. And if you wanted, after camp, I'd take you out and you could shoot like a big gun. And he was pretty excited about that. So then the next day, we discovered this particular camper and another camper had smuggled alcohol into camp and decided that Tuesday night's a good night to get drunk. And so they drank. So unfortunately, my hands were tied. I ended up needing to send them home, which broke my heart. And so there's calls to parents, and you make arrangements and you send them home. Well, shortly after camp, his mom phoned just to apologize again for the difficulties this student had caused. And I said, it's not a big deal. He just made a bad choice. And she said, he told me that you would be willing to take him out shooting. I'm kind of assuming that that's off the table. I'm going, no, but what are you talking about? No. If he's willing to go with me, if he will put up with me because I've got guns, he wants nothing to do with Jesus, but he will put up with me because I've got guns, I'm in. And so we arranged the time, and he and the other guy had to kick out of camp, said, yeah, we'll go shooting with you. So we drove an hour and a half. I didn't have to go that far to find a place to shoot, but they're trapped in my car. I just want to have time with these boys. So we got to talk about lots of stuff. We went shooting, and this student would put up with me if we could go shooting. So we went shooting a number of times. We were trying to arrange another time to go shooting, having problems with that, but he got a cell phone for Christmas. So now we didn't have to do it over the house phone and stuff. And suddenly out of the blue toward the end of January, I got this text. Hey, Rand, can you talk? Yeah, what's up? I tried to commit suicide today at school by hanging myself and the rope broke. Okay, we got to talk. There wasn't any more texting. We talked on the phone. Wow. Didn't know what to do. He was afraid. Asked him if he would tell his parents. He went ahead and said he'd tell his parents. I said, I'll call back in 10 minutes to make sure you're doing that. But then I didn't feel good about that. So I ended up driving to his house and just sitting outside and seeing that he and his parents were having a chat in the living room. And I called just to make sure that's what they were chatting about. And so they got some help, which was great. We kept going shooting. At that point, I had a friend who said, like, you're not going alone with him, are you? And what are you talking about? And my friend said, I'm concerned he'll shoot you. No, he's not going to shoot me. He's maybe a troubled kid, but he's not that troubled. And so we kept shooting. He came back to camp last summer. And it was the last summer he'd be at my week at camp. And I was talking with him, expressing how sad I was going to be that he wouldn't be there. And he said, yeah, I'm going to miss you too. And I said, I like shooting, but it'd be nice if we could do more stuff together. Hey, do you have your learner's license? He said, no, I don't have my learner's license. Well, you got to get your learner's license. If you get your learner's license, I will teach you how to drive. Now, I don't particularly like teaching kids how to drive, but it's an excuse to be in the car. And so I get to spend an hour, couple hours every few weeks in the car with this student. And just a couple of weeks ago, he decided he was hungry, he wanted to drive to McDonald's. Okay, let's drive to McDonald's. And as we sat in McDonald's for the first time, he opened up his heart. And let me see the real for the first time. Our students, the kids in our small group, need to know we love them no matter what. That's what they need. And so, I more than anything, the students in our small groups need to know they're loved, even when they mess up. Nothing I've seen or nothing I've heard changes the way I feel about you. I love you. That's what they need to know. And we can't communicate that just on a Wednesday night after youth group and small group. We have to get into their world, and we have to not just say it. We have to show it. That even after you've messed up, I had to discipline you, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. I'm still here for the long term. You're going to have to actually work to get rid of me. That's hard. That's the hard work of youth ministry, but that's where the real fruit comes from, I think.
Randy, I mean, these are examples of hard situations. And at this point, sharing the story, we're with you and we can find some moments to celebrate. But in the middle of it, it's probably just hard. And so, like, what do you say to somebody that's not yet seen the fruit, but they're just in that hard season, believing that it's still worthwhile to show a kid, to show a student love, even though it's difficult and they may not even deserve it?
Well, and I think that's a good question. I think if I could step back just a bit, one of the things that I had to learn early in youth ministry when I was a youth pastor is, how do you love the unlovable kid? How do you love them? And I think what God showed me was a few things. First of all, I have to remember who loves me exactly the way I am. I have to tap into that unconditional love that God has for me, because that God who loves me exactly the way I am loves that person that I'm having a hard time with exactly the way they are. Every day, not only does he say to me, nothing I've seen or heard changes the way I feel about you, but he says that to them. And so I need to tap into that unconditional love of God for me. The second thing I need to do is I need to ask God to show me why they are the way they are. Because no kid just decides to be broken one day. They don't just wake up and go, you know what? I think I'm just going to be difficult. I'm going to be the burr under my youth leader's saddle. It's the stuff that's happened, and over and over and over again for me, when I've asked God to show me why kids are the way they are, somewhere in the journey, as I continue to stay committed to doing everything I can to communicate, I love you, I care, you're not going to be able to push me away. Somewhere along the line, there's a moment where there's a break and their heart opens. Mm-hmm. And it's usually heartbreaking for me to understand what is part of them being the way they are. And then for me, the third thing I had to do was I had to commit myself to unconditionally accepting them before I ever tried to fix them. See, for years, I tried to fix students so I could love them. Mm-hmm. And when I got to the place of realizing fixing them is God's job, my job's loving them, that's when things started to turn for me. So what do I say to the small group leader who has a student who is straight arming them and pushing them, and you're seeing no breakthroughs? It's too early to quit. And even though they may not be giving you feedback that you're making a difference, you're making a difference. Don't give up. But it requires a phenomenal amount of energy and time to get into their world and stay there even when they push you away. And there have been times with this particular student that I've gone and done something, and Donna has said, "So how did it go?" And I have said to her, "He is not a nice kid." It wasn't a lot of fun today.
Yeah.
But I still get to love him.
Wow. That's such a different attitude. And there's somebody listening maybe, and their youth worker gave them this podcast because they have to get a little bit better at what they're doing, but they're just looking at it and they're saying, I thought my job was just to show up and read the questions and pray at the end and try and remember a couple prayer requests. But this sounds like a lot of work, Randy. Like, to actually love somebody, like there's some actual emotional investment, and hearing you talk about it, like it breaks you down a little bit. And so if there's somebody that's a little hesitant because they're just kind of new into this, or they're not quite sure what they've signed up for, like, is it really worth the cost of putting your heart out there, knowing that it will probably get hurt and or rebuilt and or pushed on and crushed, and like, is it worth it?
Yes. In one short answer, yes. And I guess when you say, some youth leaders have signed up to be a small group leader and they've been told, here's the deal. Just show up, read the questions, take the prayer requests, go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do youth ministry that way, but I would say it is far, far less effective. Because until people know how much you love them, they really don't care about what you have to say, I don't think. And I would say that youth leaders who are probably doing youth ministry at the level of come read the questions, take the prayer requests, and then go away, they're probably not finding it a very fulfilling ministry, because I bet they're not seeing a lot of fruit. One of the things that I would always say to my small group leaders is, the starting point, the baseline, the bare minimum, if you're going to love students, is what I call 2 low-level contacts a month, which could be a phone call, a text, a Facebook message, a handwritten note. How many kids get a letter in the mail? Very few. But a handwritten note thrown in the mail can mean a lot. 2 of those a month with every student in your small group. Now, hopefully you don't have more than 6 or 8, because if you do, it's awfully hard to love them practically and individually. But I think you could probably do 2 low-level contacts. And an easy one is you go to youth group, one of your students doesn't show up. At the end of youth group, a text, "Hey, I missed you tonight. Just want you to know small group doesn't feel the same without you there." Now, it would be nice if that feeling wasn't, it's much better when you're not there. Hopefully it's, I really do miss you. But just that text to say, "I miss you," says, "I love you, I care." And there you've got one low-level contact in the month. Then I also say to small group leaders, a bare minimum to contact students is 2 low-level and 1 high-level, which is a face-to-face connection with the student outside of ministry time. So that could be going to one of their sporting games and connecting with them at the end of the sporting game. Make sure they know you're there, because it's the way you're saying, I love you, I care. It could be going for a Coke, just making it that one student and you time. Now, I know there's challenges around plan to protect, and you need to stay within the boundaries of whatever your plan to protect is. If you have to do it with 2 students, do it with 2 students. But I don't think we can actually communicate, I love you, I care, in the structured youth ministry time. And I remember very clearly, before I was a youth pastor, I was a volunteer leading a junior high group. I'm trying to love on these kids, and we're doing all this great youth stuff. And one night, one of the students said to me, "You don't really care about us." "What are you talking about? You got to be out of your mind. Why do you think I'm doing all of this?" And this student said to me, "Well, that's just your job in the church. My mom teaches Sunday school. My dad ushers. You lead a youth group. It's just your job." And until we get into their world, until we cross the ministry real life barrier, until we get out of youth group and into their world, I don't think we're actually able to communicate, I love you, I care, in a way that they begin to understand it.
Wow. Randy, this is so helpful. And I think for those that are listening and thinking about their groups coming up this week, that this is one of those things where it just kind of moves our heart a little bit, that maybe it shifts a bit of our vision and how we see what we're doing in a new and unique way. So I'm really grateful for that. I want to give you the chance to give any kind of like parting words as you think about these students and as these leaders are going out to love them. Any final words of encouragement or exhortation?
Yeah, here's what I think. Until they know that you love them, you're not really going to be able to communicate truth to them. It's just going to feel like you're trying to download more information, I think. So love hard. And if it's the only thing you do, I think you've done very well. And we can talk about strategies, and I'm big on strategies, and we can talk about, the to-dos of youth ministry, and those are all important. But I think this is the baseline, most important piece. And our students need it more than ever. Where do they go to see Jesus' love? This unconditional, unchanged love doesn't always happen in families. It doesn't happen on the sports teams. It doesn't happen, at work. It's very conditional. Love is a result of performing up to standard often. And I think if we are actually going to do what Jesus told us to do, which was to love one another as Jesus loved, then we have got to somehow ask God to put in our hearts this well of love for our students. And I'm all over. I understand that you probably have some students in your small group that have the spiritual gift of irritation, and they come to youth group and exercise it. They need your love more than anyone.
Yeah. Would you be willing to pray for our youth workers that are going?
Yes.
Wherever they're listening, they might be mowing the lawn, they might be driving to youth group right now, but wherever they are thinking about their students, would you pray for them and the calling God's placed on all of our lives to minister to students?
Just before I pray, need to say one more thing, Jeremy.
Yeah.
To those of you who are listening, who are working with students, you are doing the most important ministry in the church. I am absolutely convinced that youth ministry is the most important ministry in the church. I know there's some children's workers who will want to argue with me. I'll go toe to toe with them. What they do is important, but I think it's second to the youth ministry. Most important time in a student's life between roughly grade 6 and grade 12. Most development takes place emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You are doing the most important job in the church. Do not give up. Please don't give up. It's too early to give up. Um, yeah, don't give up. Let me pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, man, I wish I could. I don't know who's listening, but I wish I could put my arms around them and give them a hug and say, thank you for loving on students. And sometimes it's hard. We're really busy and we've got a lot of other stuff going on. And some of our students don't want to be loved by us, or they're testing that love to see at what point it stops. Jesus, would you overwhelm us? Oh, would you overwhelm us with your unconditional, unchanging love for us? Would you help us somehow to get it? Because we can't give away what we don't have. And as we get it, Jesus, would you help us to liberally distribute it to those students? Because it's quite conceivable that by loving them well, their forevers will be changed. The trajectory of their lives will forever be changed. Their eternity will be changed. So, Lord, if we only get good at one thing, would you make us good at this? Loving the students that you've given us to love. Thanks, Jesus. Man, bless these guys. Give them encouragement and energy as they serve on the front lines. I love you, God. Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much for your time, Randy.
My pleasure, Jeremy.
Well, there you have it. A powerful word from my friend Randy Carter. And I'm sure some of you are going to want to connect with him. And if you want to bring Randy in to speak, if you want him to come and do some consulting at your church, or just to mentor, a youth pastor that you know that could use it, man, Randy is just so helpful. He's mentored me in a couple of key ways over the years. And I know that it would just be a blessing to have him a part of your ministry. And so you can find him at a couple places. We'll put it in the show notes. But randycarter.org and then Straight Talk Ministries. That is his nonprofit, his ministry. And so straighttalkministries.com or randycarter.org. And hey, if you're down in the States, bring a Canadian down. I'm sure Randy would love to do that as well. Well, hope you guys have a great rest of your day and into your ministry this week. What you do is making an eternal difference. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all back here next week for another episode of the Youth Ministry Team Podcast.